Hey legends, so today we're going to have a look at the back nine at the new Saadiyat course. I'm not going to go into as much detail as yesterday on how to read the greens and what you might be looking for, but there's heaps of really good tips in that playthrough. So if you want to go and have a look at some of that stuff, just jump onto my video looking at the front nine and you'll get an idea of what I'm doing when I'm looking at greens. But this is my first playthrough again, all trophy balls. End up with a pretty decent score here, so minus 16. A couple of really close misses, which I'll go through with you. And yeah, this should give you guys plenty to work with as you go into the final round of the Ultimate Pass and then into the other tournaments that we're going to get later in the week. So let's go. Hole 1, hole 10, the only hole on the whole course that's drivable. So this one's fairly straightforward. I've got a nice tail here, so all I'm doing is trying to get right up near the pin, get myself the highest tiebreaker that I can. If you were to use a distance pin, maybe you could probably get within range of actually having a crack at this, I think. But yeah, I think this one, nice easy one to just take the free eagle and head on to the next hole. So I just did a standard shot here, got myself nice and close to the right side so I can get as close to the pin as possible. Bit of a blast and a tiny bit of right curl to keep it there. And you'll see that I get up to somewhere around a 1500 tiebreaker. I think it was 1480-ish. And 1487, nice easy eagle to start. So we'll go to the approach on hole 11. Okay, so hole 11, I had a slight tailwind on my drive. I just blasted it up as far as I could, and thankfully I think this hole is going to be one that's pretty much always within range of your IM root wood. If you get stuck closer to max, if you've got a headwind on your drive, you might want to pack a Hellfire on your approach shot, but you should have a shot at the eagle here, the albatross here every time. As you can see, pretty solid rollout. So the greens are playing pretty true from a roll perspective. But when I have a look at this one heading back from the cup, so I've got a tailwind here and looking back in the direction of the pull that I'm going to need, you can see that there's a little bit of break back down the green. So it's fairly straight elevation loss. So that means that I'm going to still end up pretty straight, but I'm going to lose some elevation. So what I do here is set it up like a normal shot. I think at the last minute I take off a little bit of backspin, just because I recognise that there was that loss of elevation. And that's usually a decent way to deal with loss of elevation. You can set it up like a normal shot and then take off a little bit of the backspin, and that should help you roll up closer. Now, this one kicked left to right, right to left, so I use right spin to counter that, but you can see that even with a couple of bars of right spin, I set this one up only fractionally on the right side of the flag because I'm pulling downhill, and I'm going to overpull a tiny bit. So I offset for that in my setup. So I basically set it up close to straight at the flag, whereas on a flat green, I would be setting that one up further to the right. Hit ultimate here, and you'll see that it gets a nice solid rollout, but in that tail, you can see it still pulls up quite a lot. So don't be afraid to set it up nice and close to the cup here. If you've got a tailwind, you shouldn't get too much roll past the flag. Nice alba to start things, and on to hole 3. Okay, so you can see this one's a really long par 3 here, outside of Hellfire and Root range. So I'm switching to my highest shot view driver, the Holy driver. Usually I'll use it on the longer par 3s because it gives you a better look at the roll and the shape of the greens. So this one, a little bit of right to left break again. I've offset for that using side spin correction. Quite a bit of uphill pull here. So what I'm actually doing is setting it up fractionally short of the cup. So I want the tip of the third bounce guide to be either into or just in front of the cup when I've got a pretty strong headwind. If this was a flatter green, I would have definitely put the guide tip into the cup, but you can see it's slightly short here. I'm slightly offsetting to the left here because I've got a slight angular pull on the right side and I know it's uphill. So I usually will offset that again because of the changes in elevation and what that does to my final adjustment when I pull. So 3.66 rings on the caddy. And remember, I offset this one just to the left. Do my adjustment. And I was a little bit short on the roll in, so keep that in mind. Normally you would expect that to stop right into the cup, but in this case, see that it ends up left and past the cup. So I could have set it up a little bit further back and offset further to the right towards my pull. 898, a little bit frustrating, but decent first look at a pretty tough par 3. Alright, now on to the next hole. Okay, so we're in Bigfoot range again on this approach shot, which is always nice. As you can see, there is a left to right break here. So to counter that, I'm adding left spin. I apply all my backspin, and then I'm going to pull back and have a look at where things sit at the hole here. As you can see, pretty much a flat roll into the flag, into the cup. So I can set this again up like a normal shot, but when we have a look at this, you can see that there's a slope down the hill towards the direction of our wind. So we're pulling down that slope, which means we're going to slightly overcorrect or over adjust when we make our adjustment. So we want to account for that in our setup. So a little bit of a tailwind. As you can see, it's not much tail, so I'm setting up for a normal shot nice and close to the cup. Last minute, add a little bit of the left side spin because it was still breaking from left to right. Go and double check my numbers here. So I'm 4 rings from max. So again, as I said, that looks pretty close. You know, normally, typically I wouldn't set up that close with a marginal tail, but you can see I also offset to the left to account for the downhill pull. So we've got 4.1 rings, 4 mile an hour, wind with a very slight tail, pretty much a direct side wind. Really tough wind, this one. So Caddy's telling us 3.5 rings here. So I start 2.5 rings outside the bullseye. And I pull all the way through to the other side of the center circle. That gives me my full 3.5 ring adjust. Remembering we always pull through the entire center. 3.5 rings, and remember, I was very close to the cup here, so you'll see how this rollout looks. Offset to the left to compensate for the overpull, and look at that, straight in. So really nice eagle there. As I was saying, if you're going the other way, you're going to end up with a bit of under adjust but over roll, so keep that in mind on that hole. Alright, let's move on to the next of our par fours. Okay, so we have another Bigfoot range shot. All of our par fours, thankfully, on the back are within Bigfoot range. And this one, I did remember this one actually from the Triple C tournament. There is a bit of a increased roll right at the cup, so it speeds up as it comes in. We're also pulling slightly uphill, so I made those adjustments in my setup. We're offsetting for a marginal left to right break by adding left spin again. And this one's a little bit tricky because we start on the edge of a ridge. As you can see, it's sort of slightly downhill from the cup, but when we get to the cup, it starts to roll forward. So you get quite a kick as you approach the cup here. And I set up for that in my setup, but you'll see that it ends up slightly off, but we're still very close, and it gives you guys a really good look at making this hole. So in a headwind, I will typically set up the tip of my ball guide to be either just touching the front of the cup or into the cup, depending on how steep my shot arc is. And here we're looking just to make sure that we've got a good line here. And I probably should have paid a bit more attention to this one around the cup, because there probably is a little bit of movement right as you get to the cup. But you guys can have a look at the video I did yesterday and see how you read all of the different axes when you're setting up a shot. So we're nice and close to the pin. I was a little bit worried about that extra rollout right at the cup, and you'll see what happens. So a 3.3 ring adjust, maybe a marginal overpull here, but I think I was pretty close. Ultimate shot, so we get a proper look at what we're doing, and as you can see, just scraped the left edge of the cup. So on that one, the length was pretty good, although you would have seen the extra rollout right at the cup, but we could have set that one to hit the flag stick, so we'll note that for next time. Alright, on to the next par 5. Okay, so on this drive I got pretty much a side wind here, maybe marginal headwind, but pretty much a side wind. Lets me get to a 324 yard drive with a full overpower shot on my drive. Now even with that, I end up just outside Bigfoot range, so I wanted to show a couple of different clubs in this playthrough. So instead of using a root, which often I'll do, I'll load a basic long iron and then I will select my my root, which gives me more range, and I definitely would have been right at the end of the min range for root here. So I could have had a crack with a root, but I felt like playing with the lightning rod. So I've adjusted here already from a spin point of view with a little bit of left side spin to count for the break, and I'm just thinking about my numbers here. With the lightning rod 7, typically in a strong headwind like this, you'll have the tip of the guide going past the cup, and that's because lightning rod has not a lot of backspin, and when you've got a club that's got a lot of rollout after the first bounce, the secondary wind effect is magnified on those clubs. So you need to overcompensate for the secondary wind when you're thinking about your rollout. The caddy numbers will get you bang on back to the point where you want to get for that second bounce, but the rollout is still something that you need to consider. So you'll see that right there, I'm pretty much the tip of the guides into the cup, and that's going to be short in a headwind. So I go ahead here and bring my ball guide up a little bit further so that the second bounce starts just in front of the cup, and then the third bounce, or the arc from the third bounce, sits through the cup. So we've got it going, in this case, that third bounce arc, maybe about half of that final shot arc after the second bounce sitting through the cup. Okay, so we're about, I think we ended up about 26 rings from max here with our lightning rod. We're just doing our number counting again. So normally I only count in one direction when I'm pulling back, but I'm pretty sure I forgot my numbers here. So as you can see, that third bounce tip through the cup. So as I said, strong headwind. We want to make sure that we're getting that ball to roll up nicely after the headwind checks it up. Now, we had a little bit of what I saw as an uphill pull. So you'll see that I set it up just left of the flagstick. So the ball's still going to aim at the hole, and a little bit through the hole. And you'll see what happens here. So we end up 27 rings from max, 4.1 mile an hour headwind, 9.9 rings. And as I said, remember, I set it up on the left side of the flag. I go and do my 9.9 ring adjustment. And we get to see how this one rolls out. Hitting plenty of ultimates today, thankfully. Alright, so nice rollout here, and just kips into the right side of the cup. So even though I offset left of the flag, because I was pulling uphill, it actually had a significant effect on us here, and we still ended up on the right side of the cup. So if you're faced with a lightning rod here pulling up in that direction, you know that the uphill pull is going to need an offset towards the direction of the pull. If you need help on that, as I've said before, go and have a look at my video on reading the elevational changes in the greens, and you'll get a better understanding of what I'm talking about here. Alright, so let's move on to hole number 16. We'll go and have a look at the approach shot here. Okay, so we're back in Bigfoot range again here. We get a nice look at this shot with the Bigfoot. You can see that it breaks right to left. So we offset with right spin, apply our backspin, and now we're going to start counting our rings and have a look at what the rollout looks like and how big this shot arc is. So we're 9 rings from max here. Again, we've got a really tricky wind, a direct side wind. So that makes judging the rollout a little bit tougher. But for this one, still got quite a lot of shot view, and you can see there's a pretty solid arc on that second bounce. So we're getting quite a lot of rollout. You can leave it a little bit shorter in these ones and still get pretty close. So we're going to bring it back up closer to the 9 rings to have a look here. And you can see marginal pull up the hill. So I'm going to consider that when I set my shot up. Having a look here, that looks pretty close for a side wind. In a side wind, you can really focus on the shot view parameters for a club. So Bigfoot is 78% shot view, which means you're going to see most of the ball guide, and then you can judge what the missing piece is when you're setting your shot up. So it ended up having a tiny element of headwind here. So on a flat green, I think you might be a touch short here, but this one's got a very marginal uphill pull, so it pushes our ball forward a little bit for the rollout after that second bounce. So 3.5 ring adjustment. We make sure we get as close as we can to the center line on the middle circle. It ends up settling on the guide, and we go ahead and take our shot here. Great ball doesn't matter here. It's a trophy ball, so it still treats it like an ultimate shot. And look at that, dead center. As I said, solid rollout on this one. Probably one of the easier eagles on this course. Okay, so we've got 2 holes left. We'll go and have a look at the last par 3. Okay, so for anyone who has watched the Triple C tournament, you would have seen the disaster that I had on this hole, and we're going to try hard not to repeat that. And we at least don't want to roll back down the hill. So we know that there's a really steep slope back down the hill towards the direction that we're pulling to, with quite a loss of elevation. So that's going to cause us to overpull. And as I said, we already know that there's a lot of roll back down the hill. So we want to make sure that we're not going to leave ourselves too short here, because we don't want to do that again. At least I don't. I'm still having nightmares about that. So there's a little bit of right to left break here, as you can see, once that shot guide turns back on itself. So normally I would set that up on the right edge of the cup, but I know that I've got a solid downhill pull, which means I'm going to end up over pulling. So I don't want to set it up like a normal shot. I want to compensate for that, and that's why I've got it aiming more towards the left side of that cup. Again, tailwind with this kind of shot and a rattler with a pretty reasonable secondary wind effect. I would normally be setting it up a lot shorter, but I know I'm over pulling down such a steep slope, so I set it up left of the cup and right at the cup for rollout. And you'll see that even with that, so I've overcompensated to the left. I take my shot here, and you can see that when I come in, I still end up on the right side. So there is a significant overpull here on this that plays on this hole. So if you have a tailwind, make sure you pay close attention to the direction of it and offset the other way to make sure you don't miss that shot. At least we didn't roll back down the hill again. All right, and on to hole 18. We'll go and have a look at the approach shot here. Okay, so we end up pretty close to max Bigfoot here again. We've got a good look at it with the Bigfoot. This one, another tricky wind. I didn't get the best winds on this course, but it gives us a chance to have a look at some of the elevational changes that play in this course, which is already tough as it is. Okay, so you can see that there is a really significant uphill pull here. Only a slight amount of headwind, maybe 15-20 degrees here, so it'll still play, but you won't get the ball to hold up as much as you would on a stronger headwind. So as you can see, I'm a little bit short of the cup here, but because I am pulling up a hill, that's going to mean that my ball ends up rolling or starting further than I would typically expect it to on a flat green. So we compensate for that both by setting up short and setting up to the left, because we know that there's going to be a bit of an under adjust there. So you'll see that I add a little bit more side spin here, because I know that when we pull up this hill, it's going to underpull. I have a look here, so I'm halfway between the flagstick and the cup, and that's pretty close. I'm going to end up pulling it back. Okay, so in on a flat green, that's going to be a little bit short, but having not faced an uphill pull like this one, I didn't know how much underplay in my sideways pull played here. So first proper look at a tougher adjust on this hole with the elevation change on the green. So we go and put our numbers into caddy. 7 rings for a max, 4.2 mile an hour wind, and as I said, about a 15 to 20 degree headwind. And I'm quite short of the cup here. As I said, on a flat green, that's going to end up very short. But with this uphill pull, you'll see what happens. 3.6 rings, starting 2.6 from the bullseye and pulling all the way through to the other side of the center circle. Looks pretty good. Okay, we go ahead and make our adjustment. Okay, so I set it up quite a way short, and on the left side, you'll see I'm not worrying about the guide tip there. I'm more worried about centering it in the middle of the white circle. I hit ultimate, and even though I started well short of the cup, you can see how far I roll out. So there's probably a little bit of downhill roll that you can just see there now in front of our shot, but also that pulling up the hill makes a significant difference. So very tricky wind there. Let's hope no one gets a left to right side wind. Alright, so as I said, decent playthrough. We got both of the par 5s, so it's nice to get a couple of albatrosses on this course. You've got the freebie on hole 10, and then a couple of tricky greens to deal with, but as you can see, we've got 2 898s and an 895 on this card, so we're really close. You guys can go and make those changes in your setup. Slight offset required, and hopefully you guys are going to get the drops that I missed. Alright, good luck out there in the finals, everybody, and if you've got any questions about the game or about Caddy, reach out on the Ultimate Golf Caddy Facebook group. Cheers guys, good luck.